Daniel wasn't just fishing. He was escaping. Every cast of his rod carried away the stress of years working under pressure in the corporate jungle. The lake shimmered under the morning sun, surrounded by tall pines and chirping birds. To Daniel, this wasn't just water. It was a promise he had made to himself. A promise of peace after decades of chaos. He remembered the first day he toured the house. The realtor had waved at the sparkling water and said, "And of course this entire lake is part of the property, a hidden gem." That memory gave him comfort every time he sat by the dock. This was home. This was his sanctuary, but behind that calm surface, trouble was already circling, like shadows under the water. One chilly morning, Daniel picked up his mail and noticed something odd, a white envelope taped aggressively to the front of his mailbox. The words HOA violation screamed at him in red. He ripped it open, expecting maybe a minor neighborhood reminder. But as he read, his jaw tightened. Fine. $500 for unauthorized fishing in HOA waters. Immediate payment required. Daniel laughed at first. HOA waters? That doesn't even make sense, he muttered. He turned the letter over, checking for mistakes. But no, it was stamped, signed, and dated. It wasn't just about money. The letter carried a tone, a threat cloaked as authority. It said, "We own you." 2 days later, Daniel's peace shattered. He was mid-cast when he heard the sharp clack of heels on the wooden dock. Karen, the HOA president, strutted down with 2 clipboard-carrying board members in tow. "Fishing again," she barked. "Didn't you get our notice?" Daniel turned calmly. "This is my backyard, my dock." "My lake," Karen scoffed. "Your dock, maybe. But the lake? No, this belongs to the association. You can't fish here without our approval." The board members scribbled on their clipboards like courtroom stenographers. Karen smirked as if she had already won. Daniel said nothing more. He simply reeled in his line, packed up his rod, and walked back to his porch. But inside, his blood boiled. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration of war. The letters didn't stop. They escalated. First $500, then another $750, then one $200. Each one harsher than the last, warning of legal action and community enforcement. Neighbors began avoiding Daniel. At the grocery store, he overheard whispers, "Why's he fighting the HOA? He should just pay and follow the rules." That man's trouble. Daniel realized the HOA wasn't just targeting him with fines. They were isolating him, turning the community against him. It was intimidation, pure and simple. One sleepless night, Daniel drove to the county records office. He combed through old land deeds, property maps, and zoning files. Hours passed until, there it was, yellowed paper stamped with official seals. Clear boundaries traced in ink. The lake was entirely his property. His heart pounded. Every inch of that water belonged to him. Not shared, not public. His, by law. And yet the HOA had been collecting fees, issuing permits, and threatening residents as if they owned it. It wasn't just arrogance. It was fraud. Daniel began attending HOA meetings quietly, sitting in the back row. He listened as board members discussed the lake like it was their personal piggy bank. Karen bragged, "Last summer's fishing permits brought in thousands. And wait till you hear how much the boating fees made us." Laughter filled the room. They were proud of their scam. Daniel scribbled notes furiously. Every word they spoke would come back to haunt them. One golden evening, Daniel sat on his dock again, rod in hand. The air smelled of pine and fresh water. Then went heavy footsteps. Karen appeared again, this time with 2 burly enforcers. "You're done here," she hissed. "If you don't leave, we'll call the police for trespassing." Daniel stood calm but firm. He pulled from his jacket pocket the folded deed papers he had been carrying for weeks. He opened them slowly, letting the evening wind catch the pages. "Actually," he said, his voice steady, "this lake belongs to me. And right now—" "You're trespassing!" The men froze. Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. A quiet shift in power hung heavy in the air. The very next morning, Daniel filed official documents at the county office. The HOA had no jurisdiction over his lake. By afternoon, bright yellow signs lined every entrance. Private property, trespassing prohibited. Violators will be prosecuted. By evening, the neighborhood buzzed with shock. People gathered in small groups, whispering, "Wait, all this time the HOA didn't own the lake?" Karen stormed around in denial, but her empire was crumbling. Daniel had pulled the rug out from under her. And now the entire community was questioning everything she had ever said. The day Daniel's signs went up, the entire neighborhood buzzed like a kicked beehive. Families who had used the lake for years now stood at the shore, staring at the bold red letters. No entry, private property. Mothers pulled their kids back nervously, whispering. Fishermen stood in disbelief, rods hanging at their sides, and whispers grew into outrage. Is he serious? He can't just ban all of us. Karen promised this lake was ours. Karen rushed around the neighborhood trying to calm the angry residents. But for the first time, doubt clouded her eyes. She had built her authority on a lie, and Daniel had just exposed it. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. The room was packed, air thick with tension. Karen slammed her gavel, her voice sharp. This man is destroying our community. We need to fight back. But one timid voice from the back said, "Wait, if the deed says it's his, maybe he's right." Karen snapped, silencing him. Yet her board members shifted uncomfortably. The once loyal army wasn't so sure anymore. Their fortress of power had cracks, and Daniel was prying them open wider every day. Daniel didn't just stop with the signs. He went further. He hired surveyors and posted legal boundary markers all around the lake. He issued an official notice to the HOA. Effective immediately, all fishing, boating, and swimming activities are banned without my personal permission. Then, to really twist the knife, he attached photos from the HOA's own records, showing the thousands they had illegally collected from neighbors over the years. The HOA's silence in response was louder than any words. They were trapped, but Karen wasn't ready to surrender. One evening, she marched down to Daniel's dock with a group of furious residents. "You can't do this to us," she shouted. "This lake belongs to the community. We've used it for decades." Daniel stood calmly at the edge of his dock, arms crossed. "And you've been using it illegally for decades. Not anymore." Karen tried to rally the crowd, but something shifted. Neighbors who once supported her now looked uncertain. They had paid thousands in bogus fees. They had been lied to, and Daniel had the proof. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "This isn't over!" But deep down, she knew it was. The HOA's lawyers tried to fight. They filed complaints, hoping to scare Daniel into backing down. But Daniel came prepared. He walked into court with his property deeds, survey maps, and a thick file of HOA fraud. The judge barely needed an hour. Case dismissed. The lake is Mr. Daniel's sole property. HOA has no authority, but it didn't end there. The judge ordered an audit into the HOA's finances. Suddenly, the entire board faced accusations of embezzlement and mismanagement. Karen's empire crumbled overnight. Now fully in control, Daniel decided to send one final message. He reopened the lake, but only for himself. He sat on his dock, fishing in peace, while frustrated neighbors glared from behind the boundary signs. Kids begged their parents to let them swim. The old fishermen missed their morning routine. Daniel even posted new rules. HOA members strictly banned. Violators will face maximum legal action. The same board that once fined him was now locked out of the very lake they claimed to own. Months later, the HOA disbanded completely. Without their lake revenue, they couldn't survive. Karen moved away quietly, her reputation in ruins. Daniel, meanwhile, finally had his peace. No more threats, no more lies. Just the gentle splash of water, the call of birds, and the satisfaction of knowing he had won. The lake wasn't just his property anymore. It was his victory, proof that sometimes the underdog can bring down an entire empire. And as he cast his line one golden evening, he smiled to himself and whispered, "Worth every battle."